Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to Z Sci-Fi Stories. Recently, YouTube has completely disabled our channel's monetization, leaving us with zero budget to keep the lights on and our team paid. If you find today's story entertaining, please consider supporting us with just $1 so our creators can afford their daily living expenses and continue bringing you the best tales in the galaxy. You can easily do this by scanning the QR code currently on your screen, or by clicking the donation link down in the description or the pinned comment. Thank you so much. And now, let us begin. The sky turned into a nightmare of flesh and bone, signaling the absolute end of humanity. The ultimate predator of the cosmos had arrived, ready to feast on our terror. But instead of the expected chorus of screams echoing across the globe, the apocalypse was met with a very different sound. From the center of the United Nations command room, surrounded by the impending doom of 8 billion souls, Earth's supreme representative just laughed. The spatial fabric above Earth tore apart with a deafening organic tearing sound. From the bleeding multidimensional rift, the biological fleet of the Vylari Empire descended. These were not ships of steel and titanium. They were colossal leviathans crafted from pulsating muscle tissue, calcified bone spikes, and thousands of bioluminescent tentacles that whipped through the stratosphere. The armada numbered in the tens of thousands, blotting out the sun and casting a sickly, violet twilight over the entire globe. The sheer mass of the dreadnoughts altered the barometric pressure, raining a thick fluid upon the panicked cities below. Aboard the flagship, a grotesque monolith of pulsing veins and jagged cartilage, stood Supreme Commander Zarkul. He was the apex of genetic engineering, a flawless hybrid apex predator who possessed no biological concept of fear. Activating the planetary communication matrix, Zarkul projected his towering, chitin-plated holographic visage directly into the center of the United Nations headquarters. Simultaneously, he initiated the fear wave. It was a weaponized neural frequency, meticulously designed over thousands of solar cycles to bypass the auditory system and directly strike the amygdala of lesser species, instantly paralyzing their motor functions and breaking their will to resist. Zarkul anticipated the standard galactic response. He expected to see the leaders of this pathetic dirtball dropping to their knees, weeping, clawing at their own faces in absolute, mind-shattering agony. The tactical cameras zoomed in on the central podium to capture the exact moment humanity broke. Instead, the visual feed revealed Ambassador Ernesto Burdett, the designated voice of Earth. Ernesto was casually leaning against his console, holding a ceramic coffee cup. He squinted at the terrifying 20-foot hologram of the Supreme Commander, his eyebrows knitting together in mild confusion. Then, a sharp, undignified snort escaped his lips. The snort quickly evolved into a chuckle, and within seconds, Ernesto was howling with uncontrollable, booming laughter. The Supreme Commander's 4 primary ocular receptors twitched in shock. This had to be a localized anomaly. But as the cameras panned out, the anomaly spread. Behind Ernesto, the entire human delegation, generals covered in medals, top-tier diplomats in tailored suits, brilliant tactical analysts, were completely losing their minds. A 4-star general had collapsed onto his desk, burying his face in his arms as his shoulders shook violently. The French ambassador was clutching her stomach, desperately gasping for air, while the defense secretary was furiously wiping tears of mirth from his cheeks. The command center echoed, not with the agonizing screams of the conquered, but with the chaotic, breathless chorus of a comedy club. Zarkul felt a sensation he had never been programmed to understand. It felt disturbingly like embarrassment. He slammed his armored fist onto the command console, ordering the bioengineers to crank the fear wave to its absolute maximum capacity. At this level, the frequency was known to literally rupture the cardiovascular systems of weaker avian species across the galaxy. The invisible psychic pressure in the United Nations room intensified to catastrophic levels. Ernesto finally managed to set his coffee cup down, took a deep, shuddering breath to compose himself, and politely cleared his throat. "Excuse me, sir," Ernesto said, his voice echoing through the global broadcast. "Your Wi-Fi signal is making our coffee machine run the wrong program." The holographic image of Zarkul flickered violently, his mandibles snapping in a display of unbridled, cosmic fury. He slammed a heavy claw into the floor projection. "You insignificant sacks of water and calcium," Zarkul roared, his voice shaking the reinforced glass of the building. "I demand an explanation for this insolence. We are the end of your world. We are the nightmare of the stars." Ernesto reached into his pocket, pulled out a neat linen handkerchief, and dabbed a stray tear of joy from the corner of his eye. He took a few steps forward, pointing a steady finger right past the holographic warlord and up toward the translucent ceiling, aiming directly at the terrifying, tentacled mothership hovering in the stratosphere. "Did you really bring a space octopus with a pollen allergy to scare us?" Ernesto asked, unable to stop a fresh wave of giggles from bubbling up his throat. The command center screens shifted from the terrified visages of the alien invaders to a cold, clinical, high-definition interface. Ernesto swiped a hand across the air, activating a global biological structural analysis matrix. In less than a fraction of a second, an invisible quantum wave washed over the entire alien armada, hovering in the upper atmosphere. The wave mapped every cellular membrane, neural pathway, and genetic sequence of the invaders. The results were instantly decoded, translated, and broadcast across every screen on Earth, replacing the oppressive violet sky with glowing streams of genomic data and incredibly detailed three-dimensional anatomical models. "You see, Supreme Commander," Ernesto said, adopting the tone of a weary university professor addressing a painfully uneducated freshman class. "Before you try to intimidate a technologically advanced species, you should really make sure your weapons are not dreadfully outdated." He tapped the main holographic display, magnifying a cross-section of the Vylari flagship. The intricate internal structures of the biological dreadnought were laid bare for the entire solar system to witness, highlighting its respiratory bladders, degraded neural nodes, and structurally compromised skeletal supports. "What you call the pinnacle of biological engineering," Ernesto continued, his finger tracing a glowing double helix on the central monitor, "bears a striking genetic resemblance to a terrestrial deep-sea cephalopod that went extinct during our Jurassic period roughly 150 million years ago. And frankly, our original fossil records indicate that the prehistoric model was much healthier." The global audience watched as the analysis highlighted bright red warning markers across the joints and cartilaginous linkages of the massive alien ships. "Your fleet is literally suffering from severe cosmic osteoarthritis," Ernesto noted, shaking his head with genuine scientific disappointment. "The calcification in your primary propulsion tentacles is tragic. The synovial fluid in your kinetic joints is practically crystallized. A sharp evasive maneuver near Jupiter's gravity well would likely shatter your entire port flank into 1,000,000 pieces of space debris. We were laughing because your apocalyptic armada looks like it desperately needs calcium supplements, a warm bath, and a very long nap." Zarkul recoiled, his pride deeply wounded by the clinical, humiliating dissection of his terrifying fleet. The warlord bared his razor-sharp teeth, his voice trembling with a chaotic mixture of rage and absolute disbelief. "Insolent primate," Zarkul bellowed, his holographic projection glitching with fury. "You mock the vessels, but you will not mock the payload. I shall unleash the ravenous parasites. This engineered contagion has devoured the entire biomass of 300 distinct civilizations across the galaxy. It will strip the flesh from your bones, burrow into your planetary core, and turn your oceans to toxic sludge within 72 hours. Thousands of biopods detached from the swollen bellies of the alien ships, plummeting toward the Earth's surface like heavy drops of venom. The global population watched the screens intently, but Ernesto merely sighed. He tapped another sequence on his wrist console. A localized spatial manipulation field hummed to life. A miniature glowing teleportation portal, no larger than a standard dinner plate, materialized directly above his coffee cup. With a casual, almost bored swipe of his hand, Ernesto intercepted one of the falling biopods mid-descent. The portal spat out a writhing, screeching mass of jagged teeth, dark viscera, and highly acidic slime straight onto the pristine surface of the command center desk. The ravenous parasite thrashed violently, its multiple jaws snapping at the air as it attempted to locate a warm, biological host to consume. The alien warlord laughed triumphantly through the global broadcast, fully expecting the creature to immediately bore into the ambassador's chest cavity. Instead, Ernesto calmly reached beneath his desk and retrieved a standard, commercial-grade medical sanitation spray bottle used by the custodial staff. He aimed the plastic nozzle at the screeching terror and pulled the trigger twice. A fine, highly pressurized mist of common antiseptic fluid coated the creature. The chemical reaction was instantaneous and utterly ridiculous. The ravenous parasite let out a high-pitched, pathetic shriek. Its terrifying form began bubbling and dissolving under the mild chemical bath. Its razor-sharp teeth melted into soft gel. Its dark viscera rapidly shrank, and within seconds, the horrifying biological weapon had completely restructured its own cellular makeup to survive the antiseptic. The thrashing, world-ending monster was gone. In its place sat a small, perfectly round, brightly colored mushroom. A surprisingly pleasant scent wafted through the sterile air of the command center. Strawberry candy," the French ambassador noted from the back of the room, sniffing the air with mild amusement and leaning back in her chair. Ernesto picked up the harmless mushroom between his thumb and forefinger, holding it up to the camera lens so Zarkul could get a perfectly clear view of his defeated superweapon. "Supreme Commander," Ernesto said, his voice stripped of all humor, leaving only the cold, hard reality of human scientific progress. "We humans have spent the last 500 years actively fighting biological disasters, surviving multidimensional cancers, and battling highly adaptive synthetic viruses that we accidentally created in our own laboratories. Our immune systems have been artificially fortified by centuries of brutal, self-inflicted genetic warfare. Your ultimate weapon, microbiologically speaking, is exactly 3 evolutionary steps behind our common intestinal bacteria. If you drop those pods, all you will do is provide our global agricultural sector with a massive surplus of fruit-scented fungi." Zarkul stared at the small, pink mushroom in the human's hand. The absolute failure of his biological payload shattered the final remnants of his strategic patience. He realized his microscopic terrors were useless against a species that treated genetic mutation like a casual laboratory hobby. The Supreme Commander's eyes darkened with raw, desperate fury. If subatomic warfare was ineffective, he would revert to the crude, undeniable reality of brute physical force. "Divert all primary power reserves to the kinetic arrays," Zarkul commanded, his voice echoing violently across the bridge of his flagship. "Charge the heavy particle beam cannons, target their largest population centers, burn their cities to ash and glass. Let them laugh while their continents melt." Along the colossal belly of the biological dreadnoughts, massive sphincters dilated to reveal pulsating, crystalline energy projectors. The cannons glowed with blinding, radioactive intensity, gathering the raw, destructive power capable of cracking a planetary crust in half. Across the globe, billions of humans looked up as the sky ignited with the terrifying brilliance of impending annihilation. With a deafening sonic boom, thousands of searing particle beams fired simultaneously, streaking down toward Earth's major metropolitan hubs. But the devastating impact never came. Just 50 miles above the surface, the apocalyptic beams slammed into an invisible barrier, However, they did not shatter against a rigid force field. Instead, the beams bent, twisting violently in midair as if caught in a massive gravitational whirlpool. The pure, destructive energy was rapidly drained of its deadly heat, fracturing into millions of harmless, cascading luminescent streams. The sky exploded into a breathtaking, global fireworks display. Brilliant ribbons of emerald, sapphire, and crimson light danced gracefully across the stratosphere, painting the night with unparalleled beauty, while the horrified alien commander watched his ultimate kinetic strike become nothing more than a spectacular planetary light show. Zarkul gripped his command console, his breathing erratic. His tactical sensors reported zero damage to the planet. Not a single structure had fallen. Not a single human life was lost. "What manner of sorcery is this?" Zarkul gasped, his holographic projection trembling. "Our sensors detect no orbital defense platforms. You have no planetary shield generators. The energy absorption rate is physically impossible." Ernesto leaned forward, intertwining his fingers on the desk. The humor had entirely drained from his face, replaced by the chilling, calculating demeanor of an apex strategist executing a flawless checkmate. "We abandoned classical defensive shields almost 2 centuries ago, Commander," Ernesto explained smoothly. "Placing a static dome over a planet is incredibly inefficient. Instead, we upgraded the planet itself. You are not firing at a shield. You are firing at our atmosphere." Ernesto pressed a button, bringing up a complex schematic of Earth's atmospheric layers. "Our entire gaseous envelope is a synchronized, programmable quantum supercomputer. It is sustained and powered by the collective subconscious will of 8 billion human minds. When you fire an energy weapon into our sky, you are not hitting a wall. You are submitting a data packet to a global processor that instantly recalculates your weapon's molecular structure and actively rewrites reality to turn it into harmless photons. We simply reprogrammed your death rays into atmospheric entertainment." The psychological weight of the revelation crashed down upon Zarkul. His highly evolved nervous system began to short-circuit. He was a conqueror who understood armor, lasers, and biological supremacy. He could not comprehend a civilization that possessed no metallic armadas, yet manipulated the fundamental laws of physics as effortlessly as taking a breath of air. The Empire was not fighting a military force. They were trying to punch a god. Panic, a foreign and paralyzing emotion, flooded Zarkul's mind. His mandibles clicked erratically as he frantically searched for any tactical advantage, any flaw in the human's defense. Before the warlord could issue another futile command, Ernesto delivered the fatal psychological blow. "Do you want to know the real reason we laughed when you arrived?" Ernesto asked, his voice dropping to a low, piercing whisper that seemed to echo directly inside Zarkul's skull. "We were not laughing because you are weak, Zarkul. We were laughing because you are standing here, threatening to conquer us, and you do not even realize that you are already a prisoner." "Lies!" Zarkul screamed, though the terror in his voice was undeniable. "I am the supreme commander of the Vylari Empire. We are the conquerors of the cosmos. We serve no one." "You serve a master you cannot even see," Ernesto retorted sharply. The global display shifted abruptly. The human analysts had taken the genetic data scanned from the fleet and cross-referenced it with the Empire's behavioral patterns. A colossal, highly detailed neurological map of a Vylari brain materialized on the screen. Deep within the cognitive centers, intertwined inextricably with the alien's frontal lobe, pulsed a dark, parasitic neural anomaly. "Look closely at your own mind," Ernesto commanded. "Your entire social structure, your biological caste system, your endless, insatiable drive for galactic conquest. None of it is natural. It is a symptom. You are infected." The screens zoomed in on the dark anomaly, revealing it to be a sophisticated, ancient psychic virus. This virus was implanted into the ancestral DNA of your species tens of thousands of years ago. Ernesto revealed, dropping the ultimate truth onto the silent command deck of the flagship. It feeds on conflict, terror, and the psychic energy of war. It forces your species to conquer, to build these grotesque armadas, and to slaughter billions, simply to generate enough dark emotional energy to keep itself alive. You are not an empire of conquerors, Zarkul. You are an empire of slaves, acting as an interstellar delivery system for a parasite that has stolen your history and your free will. The silence in the United Nations command room was absolute, contrasting sharply with the chaotic unraveling of the alien warlord above them. Ernesto's expression softened, the cold, analytical mask melting away to reveal a profound, devastating sorrow. He looked up at the grotesque, armored monstrosities blotting out the sun, not with the triumph of a victor, but with the deep empathy of a healer confronting a cosmic tragedy. When your armada first tore through the multi-dimensional rift and darkened our skies, Ernesto said, his voice carrying a gentle, melancholic resonance, we did not scan you for weapons. We did not count your plasma cannons or measure the thickness of your biological armor. The very first thing our planetary empathic grid detected was not a threat. It was a scream. The holographic projection of Zarkul froze, his mandibles twitching as he struggled to process the statement. Our empathic grid is designed to measure the emotional resonance of approaching entities, Ernesto continued, taking a slow step toward the camera. And the sheer volume of agony radiating from your fleet nearly overloaded our global sensors. We heard the weeping of tens of thousands of souls trapped in eternal, waking nightmares. We realized immediately that your mighty dreadnoughts are not machines, nor are they mindless beasts bred for war. They are prisoners. Ernesto gestured to the main display, and the clinical overlays vanished, replaced by a reconstructed simulation of the creatures as they were meant to be. The horrifying armor and weaponized appendages dissolved on the screen, revealing majestic, translucent entities that resembled terrestrial leviathans, glowing with the gentle, iridescent light of newborn stars. They are star whales, Ernesto said, a sense of cosmic wonder infusing his words. Ancient, peaceful wanderers of the universe. They were meant to swim through nebulae, singing songs of starlight across the empty void, grazing quietly on the ambient energy of supernovas. But your empire hunted them down. You broke their neural pathways. You grafted hardened chitin over their sensitive skin, forced corrosive bioweapons into their breathing vents, and drove steering rods directly into their pain centers to bend them to your violent will. Silence, Zarkul shrieked, his voice cracking with panic and absolute denial. They are beasts of burden. They are the property of the Empire. They feel nothing but the commands we give them, driven by a sudden, nihilistic madness. The Supreme Commander reached for a heavily guarded console on his command deck. If he could not conquer this world, he would annihilate it along with his own disgraced fleet. If we cannot harvest your world, we will crush it under the weight of our own corpses, Zarkul roared, slamming his hand toward the master detonation switch. I will activate the neural explosive collars embedded in their brainstems. Every single beast will die instantly, and their massive lifeless husks will plummet from the exosphere. The impact of 10,000 dead leviathans will shatter your tectonic plates into dust. Ernesto did not panic. He did not order evasive maneuvers or planetary evacuations. He simply raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. The sharp sound echoed across the global broadcast. Instantly, the United Nations communication array bypassed the Vylari security protocols and connected directly to the deepest, most heavily suppressed neural cores of the captive star whales. Earth did not send a digital virus. Earth sent a song. A gentle, ultrasonic frequency washed over the entire alien armada. It was an amalgamation of human lullabies, sung in hundreds of different languages, carrying the pure, unadulterated essence of comfort, safety, and maternal love. The soothing melody of a mother humming in Kyoto blended seamlessly with a gentle acoustic guitar from Buenos Aires, weaving together with a soft, rhythmic, tribal chant from the Serengeti. It was the concentrated empathy of 8 billion humans, distilled into a frequency of pure acoustic healing and broadcast directly into the tortured minds of the Leviathans. High above the earth, the horrifying armada reacted. For the first time in 10,000 years, the agonizing roars and mechanical groans of the fleet ceased entirely. A profound, majestic silence fell over the upper atmosphere. Then, a new sound began. It was a deep, resonant hum, vibrating with immense relief and sorrowful joy. The star whales were singing back. The bioluminescent nodes on their massive bodies shifted from the angry, sickly violet of their captors to a soft, tranquil azure blue. Inside the flagship, Zarkul slammed his fists against his console, screaming commands at his navigation officers, but nothing responded. The biomechanical interfaces went completely dark. The star whales, awakened and comforted by the planetary lullaby, actively closed off their weaponized sphincters, sealed their plasma vents, and paralyzed their own propulsion appendages to prevent any further violence. They completely refused to fight. Simultaneously, a massive shockwave of neural feedback rippled through the entire fleet. The captive Leviathans forcefully severed the parasitic neurological tethers that connected them to their Vylari masters. On the bridge of the flagship, and across the tens of thousands of vessels darkening the sky, millions of Vylari soldiers suddenly collapsed to the biological floor. Zarkul fell heavily to his knees, his armored limbs completely unresponsive, his breathing ragged and shallow. The sudden disconnection from the ship's neural network had thrown the entire invading army into a state of severe catatonia. They were trapped in their own bodies, completely paralyzed, unable to lift a single weapon or issue a single command. Ernesto lowered his hand, looking up at the sky where the massive, gentle giants now floated peacefully in Earth's orbit, bathing the world in a calm blue glow. The greatest military threat in the known universe had been completely neutralized, stripped of its power, and brought to its knees, and humanity had not lost a single life to achieve it. The fleshy, bioluminescent interior of the Vylari flagship bridge was suffocatingly silent. The once terrifying command center, a grotesque cathedral of ribbed cartilage and pulsing veins, now felt like a dying animal's tomb. The entire crew, including the Supreme Commander himself, remained frozen in varying states of catatonic shock. Suddenly, the sterile hum of a localized spatial manipulation field cut through the heavy, organic air. A brilliant circle of quantum light materialized directly on the command deck. Ernesto Burdett stepped out of the portal. He wore no environmental hazard suit, no tactical armor, and carried no weapons. He was still dressed in his sharply tailored suit, looking as though he were stepping into a routine board meeting rather than the heart of an alien dreadnought hovering in the stratosphere. The atmosphere inside the ship was thick with a noxious blend of ammonia and adrenaline. But the ambassador did not even flinch. He slowly walked across the spongy floor, his footsteps echoing ominously in the silent chamber, until he stood face to face with the towering, paralyzed warlord. Zarkul was trapped inside his own heavily armored exoskeleton. His 4 primary ocular receptors darted wildly, tracking the human with a mixture of profound terror and absolute confusion. He could not move his limbs, but his vocal cords retained just enough function to produce a ragged, wet hiss. "Have you come to claim your trophy, human?" Zarkul choked out, his voice stripped of all its former booming authority. "Have you come to slaughter the paralyzed? Do it! Strike the final blow!" Ernesto did not gloat. The polite humor from their earlier exchange was entirely gone, replaced by a suffocating, almost clinical gravity. He reached into his inner jacket pocket. Zarkul braced for a concealed blade or a compact energy pistol. Instead, Ernesto withdrew a sleek, silver medical diagnostic tablet, no larger than a standard notepad. "I have not come to execute a conquered enemy," Ernesto said softly, his voice carrying the chilling weight of absolute certainty. "I have come to deliver a diagnosis." The human ambassador tapped the smooth glass of the device. It projected a high-definition, three-dimensional hologram directly between them. It did not show a tactical battle map or a schematic of a biological weapon. It showed a planet. It was a dark, bruised world, covered in sprawling, brutalist spires of bone and metal. "Your homeworld," Ernesto stated flatly. "For the past 1 hour, while you were busy threatening to melt our continents, our quantum network was quietly tracing the subspace tether, connecting your mind to your central command. We bypassed your planetary defenses and scanned straight down into the very core of your world." Ernesto swiped his finger across the screen, and the holographic planet peeled open, layer by layer. The crust fell away, then the mantle, plunging into the dead center of the Vylari home planet. What Zarkul saw made his massive, armored chest heave in a desperate attempt to draw breath. There was no planetary core of molten iron or shifting magma. Instead, nesting in the center of the world, was a colossal, pulsating mass of blackened tissue and glowing, purple neural tendrils. It was a psychic tumor the size of a continent, its grotesque roots burrowing upward through the planetary crust, feeding directly into the global consciousness of the Vylari people. "Behold your supreme emperor," Ernesto whispered, the cold truth filling the room like freezing water. "It is not a king. It is not a deity. It is a cosmic parasite, a malignant psychic cancer that crashed into your world thousands of years ago. It burrowed deep into the earth and completely hijacked the biological network of your entire species." Zarkul stared at the horrifying mass, his mind violently rejecting the image. "No," he gasped, his mandibles trembling uncontrollably. "We are the apex predators. We are the grand architects of the Galactic Order. You are the universe's most tragic victims," Ernesto corrected him, stepping closer until he was mere inches from the terrifying alien. "The Vylari Empire has never been a civilization of conquerors. You are merely the delivery mechanism for a disease. This tumor rewrote your neural pathways. It forced you to build these fleets. It commanded you to slaughter and subjugate 300 other civilizations. Not for glory, but to spread its spores and feed on the dark, traumatic energy generated by interstellar war. To break the final illusion." Ernesto synchronized his medical device with Zarkul's disconnected neural port. He temporarily bypassed the tumor's ancient suppression protocols, unlocking the deepest, most heavily guarded archives of the Vylari genetic memory. A violent tremor shook Zarkul's massive frame. Millions of suppressed ancestral memories slammed into his consciousness with the force of a supernova. For the first time in his life, the Supreme Commander did not see war. He saw sprawling cities woven from crystalline light and living flora. He saw his ancestors, unarmored and gentle, painting murals across canyon walls and composing intricate philosophies about the harmonious flow of the cosmos. He felt the pure, unadulterated joy of a civilization built on art, logic, and profound empathy. Then, the bright memories clashed violently with the reality of his own existence. He remembered the countless planets he had personally burned to ash. He remembered the billions of innocent beings he had ordered slaughtered. He remembered the agonizing screams of the star whales he had ordered his bioengineers to mutilate. The cognitive dissonance was physically excruciating. The warlord's armored knees buckled, and he crashed down onto the organic deck. Tears, thick and luminescent, spilled from his 4 eyes, streaming down his terrifying, chitin-plated face. the supreme predator of the galaxy, was weeping with the uncontrollable, shattered grief of a child who had just woken up from an endless, blood-soaked nightmare. "Make it stop," Zarkul sobbed, his voice breaking into a pathetic, agonizing plea. He looked up at the human, his eyes filled with bottomless shame and raw devastation. "Please, the guilt is tearing my mind apart. I have butchered the stars. I am a monster. I beg of you, human, kill me. Put a kinetic round through my skull. End this humiliation. End this slavery." The terrifying political standoff had collapsed completely, leaving only a broken patient begging for euthanasia. Ernesto Burdett looked down at the sobbing giant. He gently knelt on the spongy floor, placing a warm, bare human hand against the cold, jagged armor of the alien's trembling shoulder. "Doctors do not kill their patients, Zarkul," Ernesto said, a profound, unwavering compassion glowing in his eyes. "We cure them." The medical tablet in Ernesto Burdett's hand suddenly flashed with a violent and blinding crimson light. The three-dimensional projection of the Vylari homeworld began to convulse erratically. Deep within the core of the distant planet, the colossal psychic tumor had sensed the sudden severance of its control over the flagship. The ancient and malignant intelligence realized that Earth was not just a defiant world holding its ground. Earth was a deadly immune response. Driven by cornered desperation, the Parasite King retaliated with the ultimate scorched Earth tactic, through the quantum tether. Ernesto and Zarkul watched as the malignant mass activated a galactic self-destruct protocol. A sickening and draining sensation washed over the entire biological fleet, hovering above Earth. The gentle azure glow of the star whales flickered and dimmed, replaced by a terrifying and chaotic red hue. The tumor was forcibly siphoning the life force from every single living vessel, every paralyzed soldier, and the entire biomass of the Vylari homeworld. The parasite intended to compress all that stolen organic energy to forcefully collapse the planet's core into a supermassive black hole, dragging Earth and the entire fleet into eternal darkness in a final act of mutual destruction. Ernesto did not hesitate. He did not let panic take hold of the command center. He stood up completely straight, tapping the communication node on his tailored lapel. His voice cut through the rising chaos of the bridge with absolute and unshakable authority. "United Nations Command," Ernesto ordered, his tone ringing clear across the globe. "The pathogen is going critical. Execute Operation Apollo immediately." Operation Apollo was not a kinetic strike. It was not a nuclear deterrent. It was the absolute culmination of human scientific and empathic evolution. For 200 years, humanity had used its quantum atmosphere to process, synthesize, and store a monumental reservoir of multidimensional quantum antibiotics. It was a staggering accumulation of pure and targeted psychic medicine, meticulously designed to heal reality itself. Across the globe, 8 billion humans paused their daily lives. From the crowded metropolitan streets of Neo-Tokyo to the floating agricultural platforms of the Atlantic, every single person closed their eyes and drew a collective breath. Through the atmospheric quantum supercomputer, 8 billion human minds synchronized their brainwaves into a single and unified frequency of pure, aggressive compassion. The sky above Earth did not darken. Instead, it ignited with a brilliant and blinding white brilliance. The collective will of humanity formed an invisible, multi-dimensional syringe of unfathomable energy. With a metaphysical thunderclap that echoed across the subspace dimensions, the quantum antibiotic payload was fired. It bypassed physical space entirely, riding the very psychic tether the parasite used for control, and plunged directly into the heart of the Vylari homeworld. There was no devastating explosion. There was no fire, no shattered continents, and no raining debris. Instead, across the entire galaxy. A single and horrifying shriek ripped through the telepathic ether. It was the sound of a 10,000-year-old nightmare finally dying. On the holographic projection, the massive and blackened tumor writhed in unimaginable agony before instantly dissolving, melting away into a beautiful and cascading river of pure golden light. In one single and miraculous second, the psychic chains binding trillions of Vylari citizens across the galaxy simply evaporated. The absolute silence that followed was profound and heavy. Aboard the flagship, the oppressive and noxious atmosphere cleared entirely. The Vylari soldiers, who had been bred and heavily modified for endless slaughter, began to stir, slowly, with violently trembling hands. They reached for the heavy and dark battle plates fused to their bodies. With desperate and newfound strength, they tore off their armored helmets, discarding their deadly weapons onto the organic deck. They fell to the floor, clutching their faces, sobbing with the overwhelming and chaotic relief of people waking from a fever dream that had lasted for tens of thousands of years. High above the stratosphere, the gentle star whales stabilized. Their bioluminescence returned to a vibrant and joyful blue. For the first time in millennia, they were finally free to swim the cosmic currents without pain or subjugation. The Vylari Empire was dead. In its place, the foundation for a grand and peaceful galactic alliance was born. Earth would not be a conqueror. It would become the grand hospital and the premier rehabilitation center of the galaxy, offering a sanctuary for the broken and the lost. Ernesto Burdett looked around the bridge, quietly witnessing the beautiful rebirth of an entire species. He stepped forward once more, reaching out to the towering and weeping alien commander. Ernesto gently placed his bare human hand upon Zarkul's unarmored shoulder. The gesture was simple, profoundly human, and infinitely kind. "Welcome back to the light, my friend," Ernesto whispered softly. "Let us begin the healing. Thank you so sincerely." Dear listeners, for tuning into our story today, we would absolutely love to know where you are listening from. So please drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's journey and found it moving, we kindly ask for your help. As we mentioned earlier, we have lost our monetization, and our dedicated team relies on this channel to survive. Please consider supporting us with just $1. You can scan the donation QR code right here on the screen, or use the donation link provided in the description or the pinned comment. Your contribution helps us pay our staff so they have the money to feed their families and can continue creating even more amazing stories to serve you. Thank you for your incredible generosity, and we will see you in the next cosmic adventure.